All right. Welcome everyone to the Ginette Biro Podcast. I'm Ginette Biro, and with me is Lisa Richmond. She is one of our mediums at Avalon Spirit. And so happy to have you here. This is great to have you back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while.
Yeah. So I'm excited because we're going to dive into all things mediumship, like really into that deep end of what it's like for you. And we'll just see kind of where it rolls. But there's a lot of people that are curious about mediumship, how it works. And I mean, we always say every medium works a little bit different, right? And I know that you are someone who has worked really hard on your craft or your skill, your ability. You had a very strong natural ability to start with. But I remember when we were working together in the beginning and you're like, I need to just get this going. I need to know this. You were someone who completely dove in and didn't hold back to like push that doorway wide open. Yeah. How was that for you? Just diving straight into what you kind of felt.
It was a combination of things for sure. I think that it was a combination of my willingness to do it, but also my great push or pull maybe from spirit because like you said, like I had intuitive, like I was very intuitive growing up. And I tucked that away for a little bit, but I remember when spirit kind of started coming in more and more. Actually, I was working with you too. And then I remember one of our sessions, I said to you, I'm like, I had a golden light figure, a golden woman appear to me and say, it is time. And I was like, time for what? What do you mean it's time? It's time for what? And then it was essentially this. And so you're like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And from that point on, it was more, I mean, sometimes it was a little bit, it was like, I don't know. I think I'm going to pull back from this. But once you're on the road, once you say yes, essentially, when I said yes, that's when it all kind of came through and there's no turning back. And how quickly it progressed, I think I was surprised with, but I was ready for. And then, I mean, like anything else, it takes a lot of practice and dedication. You can see different times in your life when you're able to really dive in deep. And then sometimes you pull back a bit and you have to rest from anything else. But when loved ones started appearing to me, like other people's past loved ones would show up and they'd give me messages to give to their people on this side. And when that started really happening was when I realized, okay, I can't not do this anymore. I can't say no. I can't say no 60% of the way because that's what I'm comfortable with. I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And then like anything else, it comes with practice. It wasn't just a straight up thing. There's some things that came to me and I'm like, I don't know what this means, spirit. Like, I don't know what you're trying to tell me. And like, symbolisms and stuff like that, when it doesn't come through super, super clear, like you'd think, right? You have a perception in your mind of what mediumship is. You can just like close your eyes and then talk to somebody like it's me and you kind of thing. And you learn that that's very much not the case. And sometimes surprisingly it is, but most times not. Yeah. So it's been that journey for me probably over the past, I'd say really strongly. Gosh, what would you say? Over the past like 6, 7 years?
Yeah. Definitely. I like too how you brought up the fact that like it's not always clear. There's a process and a constant progression to the learning, because I really find that too. Like even just the other day, I was teaching my course last weekend and I was saying to them about learning your language and building a language with spirit. Like your language, when we talk, you're like, I saw this and it means this, and I'll say something else. And we don't have necessarily the same language with our guides. We can communicate it, but we don't have the exact same thing. Some of them are similar, some aren't, but like we are always learning new pieces. We will never finish learning new ways to communicate. And one of them, like I said in my class, was spirit kept showing me this bridge, and I would always see the bridge off into the mist. And then suddenly, and that would mean, someone's going to cross over. And then suddenly I saw the other end of the bridge in a vision. I'm like, what? what does this mean? Right. And it had a totally different meaning of,
Different meaning. Yeah.
yeah, like a new pathway is found to accomplish something, like a new pathway over
Yeah.
an obstacle. And so I love how the language that we build with our guides is always evolving. Like it will never just be done and we have it all and we're ready. It's like you get ready by running. Like you get out and you go and you take a break and you keep learning and acquiring as you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's powerful.
Yeah, and I was always surprised too. I'm continually surprised with how spirit brings through messages too for each client. Like when I started, it was very much a visionary process. So um, I would be able to see things clearly. It would almost play out like a movie or like clear snapshots in my third eye. And so I'd bring forward, okay, they're showing me this. And then all of a sudden it got a little bit more real where um they would bring me to like a place and time for this person. So I'll be like, okay, you're like 7, and they'll give me the number 7. And then they'll show me kind of like what I'm to see around. And then all of a sudden, I can feel it in my body. And I'll be like, you're gutted. And you're like, and then your response. And then all of a sudden, I'll start just talking. And I'll be like, and then this is how it was. And you were looking for this, but this didn't show up. Instead, you got this. And I'll talk as if I was explaining this to my sister the other day. I'll start talking as if it's such a clear knowing, like I just experienced it. Or I'll describe someone in their life that had a powerful influence on them one way or the other, like they were in my life. And that is how clear I know them. And I found that to be a really interesting way of pulling through messages too, is like just this sense of knowing, right? And then afterwards, I'll be like, yeah, I gave you that, but like, I don't know that. I don't know you. Like, I really try to not know people, especially like obviously on our first reading, like, don't say anything. I don't want to know anything because whatever spirit needs to bring through is what you need to hear. Right. And so sometimes it'll be like straight up loved one comes in. And then sometimes not. Sometimes we go like straight into like a time and place in their life where they got knocked off their trajectory of their, authenticity or like a trauma, lots of trauma stuff. But then you kind of get like, I'll embody it. I get this sense of knowing where all of a sudden I take on their knowing so that we can work together into like coming back into their light kind of thing. But it's always different. I never know what it's going to be. So before each reading, I'm always like, I wonder what this is gonna be like. Like, I'm almost, like, nervous because I don't know, and then when I get into it and then right? Like, then it comes in and but, oh, I'm just like, "Please, please, please help me, like, guide from the highest consciousness, let me guide them and give them what they need, with clarity," and because I just wanna be able to either give people a peace of mind, some ease, or to help them in some way, and I can't tell you how different each reading is, because it's not just straight up, like, bringing through loved ones who have passed. Like, lots of times I'm reading about people who are still living in their life. You know what I mean? It's just what they need to hear.
Yeah. And isn't that the key? And I always say that too in a reading, like whatever's going to come through is going to be what's in your highest good. We can ask any questions, but spirit's going to bring through what they need to first and foremost. And sometimes those are tough messages to deliver, right? But most of the time, there's this really neat sense of synchronicity of what comes through, right? Like, again, we don't want to know anything about the person before, right? And then it's so much fun when it's like, for example, do you understand why I'm seeing orange juice and it was spilt or something? And it's so random, but then they start laughing because that morning, say they were talking about their deceased mom and someone spilled orange juice and they all started laughing and they started talking about grandma. And it's like, grandma comes through saying, hey, that orange juice that was spilt, and validates it in a way that we could not even, you couldn't
Totally.
possibly make that up and get it right in all of the probabilities.
Mhm.
Right. And those beautiful synchronistic moments that just kind of like click the reading into go time. I love those.
Me too. Me too. And it makes me feel like, because when I'm in the moment and I'm bringing through the messages and with that clarity, there's no wavering, there's no doubt. right?
Mm-hmm.
Bringing it through. And then afterwards, when I like close up all the channels and stuff, I'm like, "Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming through so clearly for these people," right? Because I like
Yeah.
go in every time just wanting so badly to be able to provide for these each and every person to the fullest capacity of my being. But at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, I am still the messenger, right? It isn't Lisa Richmond who's like telling you I'm the messenger in this, and I hold and I work at. That's another part of like
Mm-hmm.
the training of this is working at devoting your time and space and everything in your life to be able to consistently hold a frequency so that that clarity can come through. I mean, we're all human, we do different things, but like the difference that I have made in my life to maintain a certain frequency so that it's easier for me to be able to receive these messages and these like it is within a frequency,
Mm-hmm.
right? That
Absolutely.
is practice. It's practice tending to your spirit to be able to hold a frequency for this type of work. It
Mm-hmm.
really is.
Now, what
And
would you say to those that are really hesitant or fearful about a reading? Like if someone was like, I don't know about this stuff, what would you say?
I get it all the time.
Yeah.
So what I do say
Mm-hmm.
is that obviously there's a readiness for anybody who is curious about it, but I can say with absolute knowing my experience in it is that I do not hang out in a frequency that brings through any dense information. So I don't work with any of that. I don't work with like, oh, I see death here, or I see like this so and so is mad, like they're mad. There's an angry spirit. Like I don't like I don't work in that frequency. It's almost like a level that I just bypass through.
Mm-hmm.
And I've worked really hard at being able to go straight to what I call Christ consciousness, right? The one consciousness, that this
Mm-hmm.
highest consciousness available. And and so I say that's where I go, right? That's my practice. And I do like like almost like a prayer beforehand so that there's a protective energy around us. And I can say with every single one of my readings, never fail, never once have that ever altered. And so if that is something that worries people because they're like, "Oh, can darkness slip through then? Can is there like an oh, I think some people may have a perception that when you're open to receiving source through a reading, that like, you know, demons can like kind of slip in
Mm-hmm.
there, or like, oh, can I get possessed? Right? And it's like, no. No, because I don't work in that sphere of energy, and nor can it come into my sphere of energy. That's just not the way I work. Um, and I'm very much protected by my guides, and I don't necessarily go into detail that much, and it has to be to somebody's comfort level. So I can say, I can guarantee you that spirit knows your comfort level as well. And so when I bring through messages for people, it's always kind of appropriate to their frequency level. Always.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not good or bad, but it's just the way it is. So just like if you were explaining, if your child asked you a question, you're not gonna give them if they're 8, you're not gonna explain it the same way as you would explain it to an 18-year-old, right? You have an ability to explain things or bring things through that matches their frequency in which they're able and open and they're available to receive. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to stretch you too far out of your maybe a little bit, right? But only within what you're a bit, able to absorb. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to give everything to you over your head either. And it's really interesting because that's when spirit gives me examples, or like I'll explain things to people in a way that they'll explain that that's not my verbiage. It's never something that I would normally say. So I'm like, okay, well, they're giving me like a hard sports thing here. Like they're saying like you hit it out of the park, and they're doing like 1, 2, 3 pitch. You swung and missed, swung. So like 18, like you tried and failed, but like you hit it out of the park, and they'll be like, so like give yourself, acknowledge yourself right now for something that you really did. And they'll be like a massive baseball fan or just something
Mm-hmm.
like that, like really silly things like that. But like I wouldn't use that term, but it comes through dependent upon the person, which is a really good validator for people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I always say to people, like, if you're open enough to have the reading and show up and you really are open enough, then we'll go into your higher self and your guides and we'll see how open, because at the same time, words are words, but, like, when I pull through the energy and I give it, you then are really able to see how open they are and how much you can give them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always dependent upon the person and the energetic frequency that, like, surrounds them for their ability to receive what it is. It's not about them being out of control or anything taking over them. It's nothing like that. They're always in control and I'm always in control. And it's always a very high, blessed kind of vibration in which we're surrounded with. And I hope that people who have done readings with me can like have felt that, because
Oh yeah.
I feel like I really stand behind that.
Yeah.
But there'll always
That's,
be people who will be like, absolutely not, I don't believe in it. And I'll be like, perfect.
yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it'll resonate for someone or not. Right.
Totally.
And that part's not of your control or my control if I'm in the reading. It just is what it is. But um, I mean, I know from people that speak really highly of your work, your feedback is always fantastic. It's just,
Oh, thanks.
yeah, like it's true and it's honest and it's straight to source. Right. And I know I find that too with you when I ask you, because all often, as I say to people, like, yes, I can tune in for myself, right? As you can tune in for yourself. But then there's times where, like, we already know our own stories, we have our own ideas, we have our own hopes and dreams, and we can get in the way if we want
Oh, yeah.
and try and be like, oh, Spirit said this, but it's like, did they really? Or did you say that? Because it's what you really actually want. But I know, like, when I come to you with things, I can easily turn to you for insights and understandings, and you can really pull out the truths of a lot of them, whether it's something I want to hear or not, right? Because you're going straight up to that
Mhm.
source frequency of stuff. So I can even say from my own experience, it's really bang on in what you do bring and offer. And I think that really is because you dove in, like you went all in. And I remember you were just like, you were busy traveling around the world at one point when we were still working together. And she would phone me from one moment, it was like Vietnam, one moment it was Bali, one moment
Spain.
Spain. And like,
Remember
I'm
when I
like,
called you from Spain and I'm like, the goddesses came out of the water and
yeah,
surrounded me. And you're like, yay, I knew this was going to happen.
yeah. It was so neat. Like that was devotion to be taking your young family around the world for months at a time, yet you still were focusing on your craft. And I think that is something when it is at that much the front and center of your
Hmm.
identity, your being, your willingness, your daily purpose, there is something to that that speaks to the frequency you carry and thus the frequency you can access. Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. You're welcome. Yeah.
Because I know, as you say that, I'm like, yeah, actually, it's like one of those things in life where it's not a job, right? Like
Yeah.
this isn't my job.
Mhm.
This is a part of who I am and why I'm here, right? It's
Mhm.
not like something I'm like, it'd be fun to be a medium, although it is very fun. But like, it's not like that was just like what I want to do now, because I've
Yeah.
done that a lot, a lot.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of different things, but this was more like it chose me.
Yeah. It
You know
really
what I
did.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did resist it for a bit.
I remember. I
And
remember.
like, I can't resist this anymore because it's just absolutely all encompassing. They're like my guides, and like they were just like, no, you said yes.
Yeah.
And you said yes before you even got to this plane. So like you're doing this.
Yeah. It's
And
true.
I love it. I mean, I love my
Yeah.
life. It is so fulfilling to do this. I've never felt so fulfilled in my contribution to humanity, I feel.
Mhm.
Like I've never
Yeah.
felt something so deeply connected to than I do being able to bring through spirit for people and for the greater good, always. And I can say that from the bottom of my heart that is the why behind it, for sure.
Mhm. And I have to say too, is that the spirit world, our guides will also somewhat routinely kind of test us in our own personal journeys too. Every time we are opening up to a higher frequency and next level, they will test us in our own willingness to stay aligned with the path and our own willingness to trust in the greater perspectives and stuff like that. So the higher the frequency you can access, the greater the responsibility you carry, but the more deeply tested you are to carry that in the first place.
Absolutely.
And so I say that as almost a safeguard for people that are like, I don't know, but it's like, you aren't given access without great responsibility and understanding what that means to
Absolutely.
carry it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not an overnight thing.
Yeah.
Like, I've been going through my upgrade for the last 6 months, I'd say, and I feel like I'm finally really coming out the other end, being able to, like, consistently carry a frequency within me so that I'm I'm really, like, embodying and being through this frequency versus, like, talking about it and,
Mhm.
like, in and out of it almost. So,
Mhm.
I feel like, this last one was a big one for me. This last upgrade has been a really, really, really big one for me. But with it comes this responsibility and this knowing where I kind of, had to say yes again. I'm
Mhm.
ready. Like bring it on, and I'm ready to do this.
Yeah.
And the downloads have been amazing, and the clients have been amazing, and I think the all around just experience. But with the frequency, you really you're accountable for your own frequency then, and then
Mhm.
it's like the things where it's like, oh no, I can't eat this anymore. I can't be in this environment anymore, and I can't be within this type of relationship anymore because it is too loud on my frequency, and
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
so when you say responsibility, it's in all facets of life,
Mhm.
but I wouldn't change it for anything in the whole world because I
Yeah.
love it.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So what's your take on everybody being able to connect to mediumship in some form?
I really believe this in ways that we connect. I think that everybody connects differently, right?
Mhm.
Just like people can have a different interpretation of art or a different forms of creative being, or, I think that definitely within the frequency in which you reside will have a lot to do with it,
Mhm.
right? And that's the truth. Um, but working at maintaining a good healthy frequency in your body, and frequency I mean like keeping yourself aligned with the things that aren't really dense and darker, and that can
Mhm.
be within foods, environments, um, even the words that you speak on a regular basis carry a lot of frequency with them. So, that, but I'm a big one with like intuitive knowing. Just like intuition, to start on any level is connecting to your intuition, and every single human came in this world with an intuition, every
Mhm.
single one, and it
Mhm.
looks differently for sure, but, and that's why I always say, like, if you can find your with, like, parents, if you can pinpoint a moment when your children had their first hit of, like, a strong intuitive hit of something, like, say, "This is what I'm talking about," right?
Mhm.
Like when my son came home the other day, and he was like, "I went into my friend's house," 'cause they were riding bikes. He's like, "I went into my friend's house, and when I went inside, instantly," he's like, "nothing happened, but I was just like, oh, I felt really, 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 like, overwhelmed, and I felt like I just wanted to, like, stand in the corner, and then I was like, 'I need to get out of here,' and he's like, so I left, and I just stood outside and waited for them to come out, and I'm like, 'That's intuition, buddy. Like, that
Mhm.
is an intuitive hit. Don't go back in, ever.'" And, like, that is what your intuitive knowing is. Don't ever question that. Even when someone's like, "It's fine, it's fine." And then we start to, like, second guess ourselves. So if
Mhm.
we can start at, like, a really early point on, or even in ourselves now when we're kind of programmed to feel a certain way or to go with something, we still get intuitive hits.
Yeah.
Even when we've quieted them a lot, right?
Mhm.
We still get intuitive hits. And the more that we nourish that part of our knowing, the stronger it gets. And therefore, the better able you are to connect with these higher vibrational beings, or a higher level knowing, I should
Mhm.
say. Right. And so, yeah, I believe we all came here with the ability to connect. I think it'll always look a bit different. But yeah, I think start with your intuition, and be mindful of the energies around you, right? The
Mhm.
energies that you surround yourself with. Be really, really mindful of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So within your own mediumship, because I mean, all mediums are a little bit different. Like Elise on Avalon Spirit, she connects into higher selves really well. Tanya does medical mediumship. Um, what are your, maybe not even your strongest points, because you're really multifaceted as well, but what are some of your most favorite?
I love this question.
What's your most favorite type
Okay,
of
so
medium?
I have to say it is like it is multifaceted because sometimes I'll go in and I'll physically feel it in my body and I'm like, whoa, like there's some, and then I'll go into something that I have no idea. Like I'm like, I'm not a doctor, and so I will repeat this, but they're showing me like your serotonin levels are really low. And here is like, so see your naturopath and like, but here's some things that you can do on a regular basis to like wake this part of self up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll be like you stop dancing, or you like they'll give me specifics about it.
Yeah.
And lots of times I can feel it in my body.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of physical stuff that I've really started doing more and more. But my favorite, oh gosh, I love doing inner child stuff because I know that's a big thing that spirit helps, like does through me, is takes me into a period of time in someone's life where we can actually together almost redirect the experience that they had so
Mm-hmm.
that they are living in almost like a different result. So it's like you go back and almost like change the occurrence of what have not live in the trauma, but like
Mm-hmm.
change it in their mind. Like, so anyway, that was a really cool thing. That was one of my biggest, strongest downloads from spirit. And I worked really hard to develop that one. But I love bringing through loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody has lost somebody, and they come through so clearly with like these really cool little, um, like memories together, and like validating that when somebody was thinking about them that they were there, and a lot of time is, I'm getting really emotional, having somebody know that, and like me being able to feel it, that their loved one is like, I'm okay, like I'm not hurting, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hurt then, like it's okay, and you couldn't have done anything differently because I would have gone one way or the other. And it on this side, it's really neat, like you didn't remember when we talked about what it would be like on the other side. Well, it's way better than you can ever imagine, like that kind of stuff. And it's so full to bring through these messages for people. So I think loved ones for sure.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, probably loved ones, and then working through, I know it sounds bad, but like working through trauma.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah. Lots of healing to be done there.
totally.
Yeah. And again, like it really is a uh, combination of all of those things. And you never know what it's going to be until you sit down and tune in.
Absolutely.
Even when we're like, I find even too, when we're sitting there with, in the introduction phase of the reading, where for me, I usually tell people how I do my stuff, how it works before we go in. And even in that moment, sometimes I still don't know which direction we're going until it's
Oh, for
like,
sure. I
okay.
know, me too.
And then you go in and you're like, oh, okay, we're going this way, or oh,
Yeah.
this way. It's always this, like, I find there's always this willing free fall moment
Mm,
where you have to completely like free fall into whichever place it's going to be. And that's the
yeah,
point where, like, as a medium, we can't control that piece. We have to kind of give up that piece, knowing that it's going to catch us and then we're going to be
totally.
on that path. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Fantastic.
totally. Because or else then, like you were saying before, when you're kind of getting tested with the responsibility, if it was the same, if it was just like in and out, yeah, okay, here we go, let's start. Here's the reading. I'm done. Blah 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 blah. It's like you only, in my perception at least, it's like you only open up to a certain level to be able to receive. Then it's like, okay, here's what you need to know. Blah 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 blah. It's like the same energy that you receive
Mm-hmm.
then, versus this like all encompassing kind of openness to receive from that level of
Mm-hmm.
frequency, to be able to receive it. And it's just like, it's so beautiful because it plays out in such a unique way,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Such a unique way for each and every, and that's why I go down to my little booth every time. I'm in my
Yeah.
assistant booth, and I come in and I do my like breathing, and I center myself and I set my intentions, and then I bring it in, and I come back upstairs and, oh, that was amazing. Like, oh, and then sometimes I have to like sit for the rest of the night and just like release it because I close all the doors and I close all the openings and everything, but some things are really hard. Like they're
Mhm,
really hard. You feel them on like especially working in trauma and like you feel this so deeply.
mhm. And do you find even too, some of the way spirit comes through to explain stuff is to show you the experience or to have
Oh,
you feel the experience. You're like,
100%.
oh, okay, right. So 2 gunshot wounds by a shotgun because you feel the like
Yeah.
in like
Or
slow
in the middle of
motion
a break.
or yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure. Yeah, and so it's
yeah.
like you have to like work it through your body where you're like, body, this isn't the energy for you to actually take on, right? This
Mhm,
isn't your vibration. This isn't your energy. Like I send it back to source to be recycled into love, whatever. That's my system. But
mhm,
yeah, it takes a toll. It does if you don't um stay dedicated to it. And I think that is a big part is like the dedication to not only the people in which that you're wanting to help, but also like to keep yourself in the best way you can too, like for
mhm.
me personally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I love it
Wow.
so much. And I would never, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. I couldn't imagine doing anything else than working with spirit.
Mhm. Yeah. I love that. That's when you know it's like really divinely aligned and you're in your flow, right? And when
Mhm.
you're in your flow, you can better facilitate other people to help them.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't
Mhm.
get better than that. So any closing things you would want to leave people with? Any closing thoughts about mediumship?
I think that in time, I think more and more people are going to become more and more comfortable with it as naturally, right? I mean, I'm only now becoming more and more comfortable with meeting people for the first time and being like, so what do you do? And I'm like, oh, well, I work as an intuitive medium. And either the look on their faces, I have no idea what that is, or she, hmm, I'm not sure how to proceed, right?
Yeah.
It's like 90% one or the other.
Yeah.
So I think leaving off is um, just being open, I guess, being open to different ways of life and being open to how spirit can work through each and every one of us differently.
Hmm.
Um, and that I love it. And that I hope if anybody ever has any questions about anything that they can like reach out on Avalon Spirit or the Facebook group and ask
Hmm.
questions. And like I'd love to demystify a lot of the mystics. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah, and I love it so much, and I can't wait to see and feel and experience and grow with spirit in this world. So
Hmm.
thank you so much for the conversation today about.
Yeah, no, it was great to have you on. So thank you for joining me. And for all of you, if you guys wish to book with Lisa, you can do so on avalonspirit.com. She has multiple different times available in the week. So it's not just like a one time, so it can fit your schedule. It's definitely worth it. I gain so much from my spiritual mediumistic interactions with you every time. It helps me tremendously. So I definitely recommend you guys. And so thank you so much again, Lisa, for joining.
Thank you
And
for having me. This is awesome. I love
yeah,
talking mediumship. It's my favorite.
excellent. Excellent. All right, everyone. Thank you again. Please do, if you're listening to the first time here, subscribe and share this with anyone who else might be interested in mediumship. And check out avalonspirit.com as well as the Avalon Spirit Facebook group. We are on there all the time. So it's a great place to connect and ask those questions. So you guys have a beautiful rest of your week.